I've seen many timelines, Bulma. I've seen versions of the two of us in 1,000 different scenarios. I know that, for you, the fights, the yelling, and the slaps seem like just the way you two function. You think it goes in one ear and out the other. But there comes a point when it's bad for the brain. The physical trauma and the constant stress of being reprimanded by someone you love leaves marks that not even the Dragon Balls can heal. His brain processes this treatment in a way you can't imagine. It drains the sanity of a warrior, even a Xeno. You remain blinded by your ego and your pride, he said, in a calm voice that cut like a blade. Vegeta taught you well about pride, but you learned it the wrong way. Bulma felt the blood rush to her face. She raised an eyebrow, a mixture of indignation and shock. No one, not even Vegeta himself on his darkest days, spoke to her like that. What did you say? You come from another dimension to tell me how I should feel, she began to say, but Xeno simply brought the cup to his lips again, unperturbed. The revelation of innocence. He put down his coffee and continued, ignoring the interruption. Every time Goku came here, saying he was looking for food or after Vegeta to train, in reality, he missed you, Bulma. He doesn't know how to express it like city humans do. He's a country boy. Bulma opened her mouth to protest, but he continued with a penetrating look. Even those moments you consider offensive, when he offered you to Elder Kai or Master Roshi, you got angry, but in his pure mind, that was the greatest compliment possible. He sees you as the most beautiful and valuable woman in the universe. For him, offering your company was offering the greatest treasure he knew. Xeno sighed slightly, gazing at the horizon for a moment. When he says they're sagging, he's complimenting your breasts in the only way he knows how. He lived isolated on Mount Baozu. He never learned social etiquette or how to compliment a woman with nice words. What is an insult to you is, to his brain, an expression of admiration for you having grown old by his side. You punish his innocence with shouts and blows, Bulma, and that's what you refuse to see. Bulma remained silent. The image she had of herself as the victim of Goku's nonsense began to crumble. For the first time in years, she didn't have a sarcastic retort on the tip of her tongue. She just looked at that Goku in red clothes, realizing that he knew her friend's heart better than she did. Zeno leaned back in his chair, a smile laden with bitter sarcasm spreading across his face. He twirled the empty cup between his fingers, looking at Bulma with an intellectual disdain she would never expect from any version of Goku. But of course, you're the smartest woman in the world, he said, his voice dripping with irony. Obviously you wouldn't notice what's right under your nose. So, let's talk about something your scientific mind understands better. Let's talk about the Zamasu paradox. Bulma felt a chill run down her spine. Zamasu's name was still an open wound in her memories. The truth about the future. You gave the medicine to Son Goku and sent Trunks to the past, continued Zeno, standing up and walking to the edge of the terrace. That solution of yours is what created Goku Black. And Goku Black is the one who killed future Bulma. Do you understand the irony? Your actions to save one Goku ended up murdering another version of yourself. Bulma tried to speak, but her voice faltered. Zeno turned around, his red cape billowing in the wind. That Bulma who died at Black's hands, she was Bulma Prime, the original. You here, in this colorful and protected timeline, are just an alternate Bulma. A variant created by a change in time that was like gluing the arm of a broken doll back on. It works, but the scar is still there. The love that survived hell. He took a step toward her, his expression returning to its serious and somber form. Do you know why future Bulma sacrificed everything to send Trunks back? It wasn't just because Goku was humanity's hope. It was because, in that hell of robots and fallen gods, she realized she loved him. Without the noise of the city, without the luxury, and without her ego as a famous scientist, all that remained was the regret of not valuing the man who would give his life for her. Zeno tilted his head, his eyes gleaming with painful wisdom. You didn't live through that hell, Bulma. You live surrounded by food, technology, and powerful husbands. That's why you can afford to be cruel to him. You don't know what it's like to lose the only sun that shone in your destroyed world. Do you know what the greatest irony is, Bulma, he asked, without turning around? Tell me, of all the warriors, of all the friends, how many times is it Goku who ends up crossing your path? How many times, without any logical or scientific reason, does he end up going after you? Bulma opened her mouth to answer, but memories overwhelmed her, the encounter on the road on Mount Baozu, the search for the Dragon Balls, the trip to Namek, the sudden visits to Capsule Corporation, the destiny written in the stars. Zeno turned around, and this time there was no sarcasm on his face, only an unavoidable truth. This happens because destiny wants you two to be together. It doesn't matter the timeline, it doesn't matter the universe, or how many times time is torn apart. Remember what I told you at the beginning? He took a step forward, entering Bulma's personal space, making her look up to meet his determined eyes. Everything that begins between you two, ends between you two. You are the alpha and the omega of this story. The journey began with a girl with blue hair and a boy with a tail on a dirt road. And, at the end of all ages, at the end of all multiverses, it is you two who remain as the central pillar of everything. The final sentence. When you yell at him, when you push him away with your pride, you are fighting against the very nature of the universe, he continued, his voice echoing like distant thunder. You try to convince yourself that Vegeta is your safe haven, but your first thought in any crisis, your first cry for help, has always been and always will be for the man you met on that road decades ago. Black and Zamasu were stupid, or maybe they just didn't have the necessary information, he began, with an icy look. Because, in the end, the real enemy of their plans, and the reason for all that chaos, was you, Bulma. Bulma took a step back, her heart pounding erratically. Now, do you want me to tell you your greatest sin? Asked Goku Xeno, approaching. Disdain for the sacred. He pointed to the laboratory, where the shadows of technology hid. Remember that new time machine? The one that Bills destroyed? You should never have messed with it again. Time travel isn't a toy, Bulma. It's something sacred, a rift in reality that shouldn't be touched. But you started using it for nonsense, for vanity, for petty things. Bulma tried to open her mouth to defend herself, but Goku Zeno's words silenced her like a physical blow. Every time you play at being a goddess of time for feudal conveniences, you're spitting on future Bulma's sacrifice. You're dishonoring all the suffering of your son Trunks, who had to watch his world be reduced to ashes so that time could be fixed just once. The memory of the illness. Goku Zeno took a final step, standing just inches from her. The pressure of his ki was suffocating. You disrespect Goku's death from heart disease. That event was what gave rise to the need for the machine. It was a tragedy that changed the fate of trillions. When you use that same technology for trivial things, you show that you understood nothing about the weight of life and death. Do you understand now, Bulma? Do you understand the magnitude of your disrespect? If you had completed that journey, he began, his voice low and laden with divine authority. If Bills hadn't stopped you from crossing that forbidden line, you would have opened a wound that would never heal. He leaned in, forcing Bulma to face the reflection of her own guilt in his eyes. The marked hands. You can be sure of one thing, all the deaths caused by the androids in the future, all of Black's massacre, and every life taken by Zamasu, all of that would be etched on your hands. The blood of every child, every friend, and every warrior who fell into that hell would be your responsibility for playing with what you shouldn't have. Bulma shuddered, feeling an invisible weight crush her shoulders. She looked at her own hands, almost expecting to see them stained red. You think you're a heroine because you help with science? Goku Zeno continued, relentless. The moment you ignore the laws of time on a whim, you become an accomplice to all the villains who use time to destroy. Future Bulma gave her life to close that door, and you, out of pure ego, tried to leave it ajar again. The scientist's silence. The greatest mind on earth was silent. The woman who yelled at gods and argued with angels was reduced to a shadow of herself. She realized that Bill's protection and her friendship with Was had spoiled her, making her forget that the universe is not a controlled laboratory. Goku Zeno stepped back a little, giving her space to breathe, but the warning had been given. Destiny would not forgive another mistake. What do you want me to do? She asked, her voice faltering. Why did you come all this way to tell me all this? Goku Zeno uncrossed his arms and looked seriously at her. The aura around him glowed for a brief second. In almost every reality, Goku ends up with Chi-Chi, it's the natural course in many of them. But this one, this main timeline is different. I want you to be with Goku in this reality. The conflict of the heart. Bulma's shock was immediate. Her face turned pale. But, what about Vegeta? She stammered. I have a life with him. We have Trunks, brah. I can't just discard years of marriage. Goku Zeno was unfazed. He gave a wry, somewhat bitter smile and took a slow step toward her. Bulma, I'll answer that question with another question. If you were truly happy with your marriage, why do you keep trying to seduce other people? Bulma opened her mouth to protest, but he continued, relentless. Why do you use the Dragon Ball, something sacred that should save worlds, to enlarge parts of your body or look younger? Do you do it for Vegeta? Or do you do it because you feel an emptiness that his compliments, or lack thereof, can't fill? He stopped in front of her, his shadow completely covering her. Look inside yourself and answer honestly, not to me, but to your own heart. Are you absolutely sure you want to be with Vegeta? Or are you just settling into a life of appearances while your spirit cries out for the man you met on that mountain?